Hello, book lovers! Welcome to Read with Fatim, where every story comes to life in just a few minutes.
Have you ever loved a story so much that you wished you could step inside its pages? That's exactly how I feel about Masterpiece. It's a book that's been cherished for generations, first arriving in the world in that's over 60 years of pure imagination. It's so special because it doesn't just tell you a story, it makes you the hunger, the awe, and the sheer dazzling hope right along with its characters. Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory 1964 feel. Dahl, with his wonderfully wicked sense of humor, painted a world where the impossible is just a chew away. But underneath all the exploding candy and fizzy drinks, this story is about so much more than sweets. It explores the big, important ideas of destiny and purity of heart. It teaches us a lesson about greed versus gratitude and how sometimes the quietest, poorest hearts hold the biggest dreams. It's about how being kind and unselfish can be the greatest fortune of all. So, take my hand. Imagine the crisp sound of old paper and the smell of a forgotten book as we open the cover together. Close your eyes and let's step out of our world and right onto a cold, gray street where a tiny, magical house holds the most wonderful boy you'll ever meet. It's time to find out what happens when one small act of destiny changes a little boy's life forever. Are you ready to go inside Willy Wonka's world? Our story begins in a crooked, worn-down house on the edge of a great smoky city. This is the home of Charlie Bucket, a tiny little boy with the kindest eyes you could ever imagine. The house was far too small and so terribly cold, and the wind seemed to sneak right through the cracks in the walls, howling a lonely song. Life was hard for the Bucket family. There were 7 of them squeezed together: Charlie, his mother and father, and his 4 bedridden grandparents: Grandpa Joe, Grandma Josephine, Grandpa George, and Grandma Georgina. They were so poor that Charlie's father, who usually worked at a toothpaste factory, could barely earn enough to buy their daily meal of thin, watery cabbage soup. Charlie was always hungry, a deep, hollow feeling in his tummy that never quite went away. But even in the bitter cold and endless hunger, there was one thing that kept Charlie's spirits warm: the magnificent, towering shape of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It stood like a mysterious, delicious castle, just visible from the tiny windows of the Bucket home. This wasn't just any factory, it was the most famous, most wonderful, most secret chocolate factory in the entire world. For years, no one had been seen going in or out, yet great trucks filled with amazing sweets would still zoom away to every corner of the globe. It was a place wrapped in mystery and magic, and the sweet, powerful scent of melting chocolate drifted like a wonderful, impossible dream right over Charlie's little house. Every day, Charlie would stand outside, shivering a little, just breathing in that heavenly smell and wondering what impossible wonders lay behind those tall, black gates. The one treat Charlie looked forward to all year was his birthday. On that special day, he received a single, solitary bar of chocolate. He would unwrap it with the delicate care of a scientist handling a rare treasure, making the joy of that one small bar last for an entire month. He'd smell it, touch it, and then, slowly, take the tiniest nibble, letting the sweet, rich flavor melt slowly in his mouth. It was his piece of paradise in a cold world. Then, one cold, ordinary day, an extraordinary piece of news crackled through the town, shaking the gray streets like a joyful thunderclap. Willy Wonka himself had decided to open the factory doors, but only to 5 children. He had hidden 5 golden tickets beneath the wrappers of 5 ordinary Wonka chocolate bars, and those lucky finders would be given a full personal tour of the factory by Mr. Wonka himself, plus a lifetime supply of sweets. The world went utterly mad. People stopped working. They spent all their money tearing open chocolate bars with desperate, greedy hands. The first 4 tickets were found one after the other, and we meet the lucky and very spoiled winners. First was Augustus Gloop, a boy so enormously fat that he looked like a giant sausage who loved food more than anything. Then came Veruca Salt, a nasty, demanding girl whose wealthy father would buy her anything she screamed for, even 10,000 chocolate bars. Next was Violet Beauregard, a competitive, gum-chewing champion who cared only about winning. And finally, Mike TV, a boy who did nothing but watch violent television shows all day and was almost certainly ruined by screens. The world focused on these 4 spoiled children, but Charlie, watching the frenzy from his cold, quiet home, kept hoping. Grandpa Joe, the liveliest of his grandparents who hadn't gotten out of bed in 20 years, suddenly felt a spark of hope. He shared his secret memories of working near the factory long ago, telling Charlie the most magical stories of Mr. Wonka's genius. He told Charlie to hold on to his tiny bit of hope, because maybe, just maybe, the 5th ticket was meant for him. The world was holding its breath. 4 tickets were gone, and only 1 remained. The tension was almost unbearable. Charlie had only 1 more chance, the small, precious birthday bar he'd saved. With his family watching in silence, a hush fell over the room as Charlie carefully peeled back the wrapper. His heart was beating like a tiny drum in his chest, but nothing. Just plain brown chocolate. The disappointment was a sharp, cold sting, not just for Charlie, but for his whole loving, weary family. Grandpa Joe sighed, and the small, flickering candle of hope seemed to blow out in the little house. Weeks went by, and the cold seemed to grow colder, and the cabbage soup grew even thinner. Charlie's father lost his job, and the family was now truly struggling, their situation feeling desperate and hopeless. One snowy afternoon, walking home from school, Charlie saw something glittering in the slushy snow. It was a 50-pence coin, shiny and beautiful, half buried in the mud. For a boy who was always hungry, this was a fortune. He knew he should take it straight home, but the gnawing emptiness in his stomach was too strong. He rushed to the nearest shop, a friendly little sweet shop, and bought a chocolate bar. Not just any bar, but a Wonka Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight. He unwrapped it quickly and devoured it, the taste of real chocolate flooding his senses with warmth and joy. It was the first time he'd truly eaten in what felt like forever. But as he paid for the bar, he noticed he still had some change left over. A sudden, irresistible impulse, a strange whisper of destiny, made him point at another bar, an ordinary-looking Wonka's Nuts and Chocolate bar. "I'll have that one too, please," he whispered to the shopkeeper. And this is where the real magic happened. Charlie peeled back the second wrapper, feeling nothing but a comfortable fullness in his tummy. Then he saw it, a flash of brilliant, unmistakable gold. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was the golden ticket. It shone so brightly in the dingy shop that it looked like a small folded sun. At first, Charlie couldn't even speak, he just stared. Then, the shopkeeper noticed the glow and burst out with an excited cry that stopped everyone on the street. A crowd immediately gathered, their faces pressed against the window, shouting and demanding that Charlie sell the ticket to them. One person offered him £200, another offered him a lifetime of riches. But the kind shopkeeper, an honest man, looked into Charlie's wide, innocent eyes and said, "Run straight home, son. Don't let anyone take that from you. You've been lucky once. Don't lose it now." Clutching the ticket to his chest, Charlie ran as fast as his skinny legs could carry him, the golden paper crinkling like magic. When he burst into his little house, the entire family was silent for a moment. Then, an explosion of joy and wonder filled the cold room. Grandpa Joe, who hadn't walked in 20 years, sprang out of bed like he'd been given wings, doing a wild, joyful dance. The 5th golden ticket belonged to Charlie Bucket. And Charlie knew in that small, shining moment that he would be taking Grandpa Joe with him to the greatest factory in the world. The invitation was clear. They were to be at the gates at 10 o'clock the next morning. The next morning was the day of the tour. Charlie, clean and full of excitement, stood with his beloved Grandpa Joe, clutching the golden ticket, right outside the massive, black, wrought iron gates of the great factory. The other 4 winners and their demanding, anxious parents were already there, posing for the cameras and looking terribly important. Then, exactly as the clock tower struck 10, the gates creaked open and a small, vibrant, extraordinary man stepped out. This was Mr. Willy Wonka himself. He wore a top hat, a purple velvet coat, and green trousers, and his eyes were full of a dazzling mischief. He was eccentric, jumpy, and utterly charming. Mr. Wonka led the 5 children and their chaperones inside, and the journey began. The inside of the factory was nothing like they imagined. It was a wonderland of impossible inventions. Their first stop was the chocolate room, a landscape of pure imagination. The air here was warm and moist, thick with the scent of 1,000 different chocolates. The floor was covered in smooth green grass made of sugary soft mint. Everything was edible, but the real marvel was the great brown river of melted chocolate that flowed through the room, churned by waterfalls of rich dark cocoa. And the banks of the river? They were dotted with trees and bushes made of lollipops and gummy drops. But the greedy children couldn't help themselves. Augustus Gloop, the boy who loved food more than life, immediately ignored Mr. Wonka's warnings about the river's purity. He knelt by the bank and began to scoop handfuls of the chocolate and gulp it down. And of course, in a sudden sickening moment, he leaned too far over the edge and splashed right into the chocolate river. He was sucked under the surface only to be drawn up the other side into a huge glass pipe that transported the raw chocolate to the fudge room. Mr. Wonka, completely unfazed, simply had the Oompa Loompas, tiny magical people from Loompaland who did all the work, escort Augustus's frantic parents away to find him. The tour continued through unbelievable rooms. They boarded a pink sugar boat and sailed down the chocolate river, passing by caves and tunnels filled with sweet wonders. Next, they came to the inventing room, a sparkling white kitchen where Mr. Wonka made his most top-secret, amazing inventions. Here, Violet Beauregard, the gum-chewing champion, found a piece of gum that was a 3-course dinner: tomato soup, roast beef, and baked potato, followed by blueberry pie and cream. Mr. Wonka warned her it wasn't quite ready. It was still unstable. But Violet, determined to be the first to try it, popped it into her mouth. The first 2 courses were delicious, but as she reached the dessert, her face started to turn blue. Her entire body began to swell up, growing larger and rounder until she looked like a giant blueberry. Again, Mr. Wonka simply called for the Oompa Loompas to roll her off to the juicing room to be squeezed. 2 children were now gone. Charlie and Grandpa Joe looked on with a mix of awe and worry, but mostly pure fascination. The tour went on, getting stranger and more wonderful with every turn. Mr. Wonka, never stopping, led them into the nut room, where 100 trained squirrels sat on high stools, shelling walnuts with incredible speed. Here, Veruca Salt, the spoiled girl, decided she must have one of the squirrels. When Mr. Wonka refused to sell her one, she threw a terrifying temper tantrum declaring she would get one herself. She rushed onto the factory floor to try and grab a squirrel, but the trained animals knew she was a bad nut. They immediately pounced on her, tapped her forehead with their little paws to test for a rotten heart, and then, finding her completely rotten, dragged her to the garbage chute, which led straight to the incinerator. Her parents, horrified, rushed after her and fell into the chute as well. 3 children gone. The remaining group, Charlie, Grandpa Joe, Mr. Wonka, and Mike TV and his father, then entered the television chocolate room. This was perhaps the most astonishing room of all. Mr. Wonka had invented a way to send a real bar of chocolate right through the airwaves via television, so you could grab a bar of chocolate right out of your TV screen. It was revolutionary, but it worked best for large things like chocolate. Mr. Wonka warned them that it didn't work so well with people. It shrank them down to tiny sizes. But Mike TV, the boy obsessed with television, ignored the warning. He shouted that he didn't care about the risk and ran toward the enormous camera, leaping right in front of the lens. With a blinding flash and a crackle of electricity, he was instantly shrunken down to the size of a doll and was now running around on his father's hand, looking like a tiny angry toy. Mr. Wonka was annoyed, but once more instructed the Oompa Loompas to take Mike to the taffy pulling machine to be stretched back to his normal height, though he'd probably be a bit too tall now. And then there was just one. Charlie Bucket was the only child left standing. Mr. Wonka stared at Charlie and Grandpa Joe, a strange, satisfied smile playing on his lips. They left the television room and entered the great glass elevator, a lift that could go up, down, sideways, and even through the roof. Mr. Wonka pressed a button marked up and out, and the elevator shot through the ceiling of the factory, bursting through the glass roof and soaring high into the sky. As they floated over the city, Mr. Wonka turned to Charlie, his eyes sparkling with a genuine warmth they hadn't seen before. "My dear boy, he said, his voice softer now. "You're the only one left." "Do you know what that means?" Charlie, wide-eyed, shook his head. Mr. Wonka simply beamed. "It means you've won." "I'm an old man, Charlie. I've been looking for someone to take over the factory, someone to show all my secrets to, someone with a kind, good heart who won't spoil things, someone who is honest and wouldn't steal or lie, even when they're hungry. You, Charlie, are the heir. The factory is yours." Charlie and Grandpa Joe were completely stunned. They flew the great glass elevator right back down to Charlie's tiny, worn-down house. Mr. Wonka explained that the whole family, all 7 of them, would move into the factory with him right away and that he would take care of them forever. He even made a plan to lift the bed with all 4 grandparents still in it and fly them in the great glass elevator to their new magical home. And so, with a great burst of joy and a loud whoosh of the glass elevator, Charlie and his entire family were lifted up and out of their dreary, cold life and into the warmest, sweetest, most extraordinary home in the world, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Charlie, the poorest, hungriest, and kindest boy, had found the greatest destiny of all. What an adventure! Isn't it amazing how a little bit of fate, a little bit of chocolate, and a whole lot of kindness can change everything? For me, this story isn't just about winning a factory. It's about the beautiful, simple truth that being a good person is the most valuable thing you can ever be. The children who were greedy, selfish, and obsessed with only what they wanted all failed. But Charlie, who was selfless and grateful for a single bowl of soup, was rewarded with everything. It makes me feel so happy and warm, like that first sip of hot cocoa on a winter's day. It reminds us that magic is real, but it's often hidden inside the quiet moments, like sharing a small bar of chocolate with someone you love. So, as we close this sweet, wonderful chapter, I want to ask you, what great dream are you holding on to today? Keep it safe, keep it kind, and always remember Charlie, because if you have a good heart, your destiny